Welcome to Paul's Bike Shop. My name's Paul Nicholson, and today I'm going to teach you how to build your own wheel with a minimum of special tools. Why would you want to build your own wheel? Well, maybe the wheel you have now looks like this one. Or maybe you'd like to replace your ordinary wheel with a nice, shiny, new alloy wheel like this one. Or maybe you just want to have the satisfaction of knowing how to do it. Whatever the case may be, this tape will give you a means of learning how to build a wheel with a minimum of time and effort. Now, the way you should use this tape is you should view the whole tape from beginning to end without interruption the first time. Then wind it back and follow along the second time. You can always stop the tape if you need to, and you can even rewind a little and watch part of it over again. So let me show you what you need to get started. Before you build your wheel, you're going to need a few things. And the first thing you're going to need is the actual components that go into the wheel. Those are the hub, rims, and a set of spokes. And you'll need a spoke wrench and a screwdriver to tighten the nipples on the spokes. You'll need oil to lubricate the threaded end of the spoke. And it's handy to have a bicycle stand to hold up the rear wheel and a new set of brake pads. Just any old hub, rim, and spokes won't do, though. You are going to have to make sure that the hub you choose and the rim you choose are compatible. And that means that if you have 36 holes on the hub, you have to have 36 holes on the rim. And you're going to have to make sure that the spokes you get are the right length for the hub and rim and spoke pattern that you pick. Be sure to take your hub and rim to a professional bicycle dealer and get a spoke length that's going to work, because you don't want to put this whole wheel together and at the end find out that your spokes are too long or too short. We're going to divide this task into two major parts: the lacing and the truing. And before we start lacing the wheel, I want to discuss a few of the terms that we're going to use when we talk about how to do it. And let's start with the hub. The hub has flanges, and you should also notice that we're building a rear wheel, and on a rear wheel, on one side of the hub you have a threaded portion. The threaded portion is the part of the hub that accepts the freewheel. Let me show you. You see this? It threads right there on the hub. And the flange on the freewheel side, the flange right here by the threaded portion of the hub, we will refer to that as the freewheel side flange of the hub. And the other flange we'll refer to as the non-freewheel side. It's also interesting to note, if you take a close look at your hub, you'll notice that the holes on the opposite flanges are actually staggered. That is to say, every hole on one flange is drilled right in between two holes on the other flange. So you take a look at that now, and you'll see how that bears on the task when we talk about lacing the wheel later. Each of these flanges has 18 holes drilled in it. We have 36 in the whole hub. Now, the rim looks like it's just a round steel band with holes drilled in it, but it's not actually symmetrical. If you look at the rim, this is the valve hole that you see under my finger. If you look very carefully, you'll notice that the spoke holes are not drilled exactly in the center of the rim. Every other hole is staggered either above or below the center line of the rim. And when we hold the rim in this orientation, we're going to refer to the ones that are above the middle of the rim as the high holes, and the ones that are below the middle of the rim as the low holes. We also have the spokes. We're going to be talking about the spokes a lot. This is the threaded end, which is obvious enough, but the spoke also has a head. And the head is the bent part with the flattened end. When we insert this head into the rim, when we insert this head into the hub, thus, the head will have an orientation. If the head is facing away from the center of the hub, the way it is in this instance, you see, we'll call that a head-out spoke. On the other hand, if we insert the spoke this way, so that the head is on the inside of the flange, facing the center of the hub, we'll call that a head-in spoke. Now I think we're ready to start lacing. We're going to build a rear wheel because rear wheels are the same as front wheels except for one thing. The rear wheel has a freewheel side and a non-freewheel side. If you look closely, you'll notice that the axle sticks out further on the freewheel side than it does on the non-freewheel side. That means that when you build a rear wheel, besides simply truing it, you're going to also have to dish the wheel. So if you can learn how to build a rear wheel, you can build a front wheel. Okay, now our object in building a wheel, the way we build it, is to do it in such a manner that it will require the minimum spoke manipulation to insert the spokes. Second, so that the pattern will be such that the valve hole will fall between a parallel run of spokes like this. Do you see the valve hole? We want to make sure that you can easily access the valve with an air hose after you've finished your wheel. We're going to treat this lacing project as actually 4 insertions of 9 spokes. The first set of 9 spokes we're going to insert will be the freewheel side head-out spokes. Then we'll insert the non-freewheel side head-out spokes. Once we've inserted all the head-out spokes, we'll insert the freewheel side head-in spokes and then the non-freewheel side head-in spokes. Now we can start to actually lace the wheel. Might take the quick release out, just get in the way. We're going to insert the head-out freewheel side spokes first, and pick out 9 spokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Don't forget to dunk the threaded ends in oil before you insert them. Now, we're going to insert spokes in every other hole in the freewheel flange. That means that when you get done, you should see a hole with a spoke in it, then an empty hole, then a hole with a spoke in it, and then an empty hole, and so forth all the way around. And if you've done it right, when you're finished inserting the 9 spokes, it should look like this. Now, this first spoke is going to be an important spoke. It's what we call a key spoke. It doesn't really matter which one you pick on the hub, but you must lace the first spoke to the high hole just barely counterclockwise of the valve. Look here, you see there's the valve hole, and here's a high hole just counterclockwise of the valve. You see that? That's your key spoke. We're going to refer to that spoke in the future. Take a nipple and thread it on far enough, 2 or 3 turns is enough, just so that it won't fall out. Okay? Now, we're going to follow the flange counterclockwise. That is, we're going to pick the next spoke on the flange moving counterclockwise. And we're going to take it to the fourth hole on the rim counterclockwise of the key spoke you already inserted. So you'll see 3 empty holes between the key spoke right next to the valve hole and your next spoke emanating from the flange. All right. The reason we're going to the fourth hole, I mentioned earlier we have 4 kinds of spokes. We're 4 sets of spokes. The sets of spokes being the head in and head out from each flange. So that means that you have 4 types of spokes and you need one hole in the pattern for each type. So you're going to put these spokes in each fourth hole. That means you're going to leave 3 empty holes between each spoke. So you work around the hub, picking the next counterclockwise spoke, and you work around the rim, in each case going to the fourth hole counterclockwise of the last spoke you inserted. All right, here we go all the way around. Remember that you should always see 3 empty holes between each of your spokes. Just work around the flange of the hub. You should, when you get around and insert your last spoke in the rim, you should have a pattern which is absolutely symmetric. That is to say, the last hole should be, the last spoke should be just 3 holes away, 3 empty holes in between the last spoke and your original key spoke, the one that was right here next to the valve. That was that's the spoke we're going to refer to in the future as a benchmark. So make sure when you look at this wheel that you have a spoke going to the high hole, just barely counterclockwise of the valve hole, and that there are 3 empty holes between every spoke you've inserted. You see how that looks? Uh-oh. Be sure that you put in a couple of turns on each nipple so that they don't fall off when you see that? All right, now we've got the first 9 spokes inserted. We're ready to do the next 9. Go back to your box of spokes and count out 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Don't forget to oil the threaded ends. Now, I've turned the wheel over, so you'll notice that our original key spoke is now on the clockwise side of the valve hole. And here's the valve hole, here's the key spoke. What we want to do is insert a spoke in the proper hole on the hub to go to the high hole closest to the valve on the same side that you had your original key spoke. So we're about to insert the second key spoke, and this is a tricky part of the lacing job. We want to find the right hole on the non-freewheel flange for a spoke that's going to go to the key spoke, to the hole on the same side of the valve, closest to the key spoke we already inserted. You want to go just a little bit clockwise on the hub and go to the hole that's just a little bit clockwise on the rim. This is one of the trickier parts of lacing a wheel. What we're trying to do is find the hole on the flange, which is the correct one to go to the high hole closest to the valve on the same side as our original key spoke. Since we've turned the wheel over, now it's just clockwise of the valve hole, you see? So we're going to the second hole from the valve hole. And since we're going a little bit further clockwise on the rim, we want to go a little bit further clockwise on the hub flange. So we want to find the hole on this flange that just falls a little bit further clockwise Now, take a look at this. You see, if I hold this perpendicular, it falls right between the hole from which our original key spoke emanates and the next hole clockwise. That's the one we want. It's just a little further clockwise on this flange than the original key spoke was. And we're going to the hole that's just a little further clockwise on the rim. There we are. Now this is tricky. You want to really pay attention here. Make sure that this spoke is going to the same side of the valve hole that your original key spoke goes to. Make sure that it's coming from a hole on the hub that would fall just barely counterclockwise of the hole on the hub from which your original spoke emanates. And then it should look like that. After you've inserted that spoke, it's easy. You just do the same thing you did the last time. You go to the fourth hole counterclockwise each time. Just go right around the rim like this. Make sure you leave an empty hole in between each one. You can insert them all if you like before you lace them. Leave an empty hole all the way between each. Fill a hole with a spoke, leave an empty hole, fill a hole with a spoke, leave an empty hole, and go that way right around. So if you've inserted these properly, you'll see a hole filled with a spoke and an empty hole, and a hole filled with a spoke and an empty hole, and so forth, all the way around. Now, you can take the spoke just counterclockwise, go over, 1, 2, 3, fourth hole over, counterclockwise. If you've done it right, it should be right next to a spoke from the other flange, but it should be on this clockwise side of the spoke. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see we have another pair of spokes like that. Between each pair of two spokes, you'll have two empty holes.